Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Tales from the PowerAge. And today we've got British heavy metal institution, Saxon. So just going to keep jamming happy. Welcome to the boys, the same crowd as always. Hi guys.
Hi.
So today we're going to talk about Saxon in particular, and in detail we're going to talk about Crusader, the album, and the '84 Crusader Tour. So really looking forward to that. So I thought what we're probably best kicking off with is how we got into Saxon, but maybe starting with the heavy trinity. So I'll come to you first, Jam, as the standing Saxon expert.
I wouldn't say expert. However, Saxon in our house were massive. My oldest brother, who I've mentioned on many of these pods, Kevin, he had the joy of attending a Wycombe Town Hall gig in around 78, 79, the first record.
Oh, yeah.
He loved them, said they were the loudest band, other than Motorhead, that he'd ever seen. He couldn't believe that Wycombe Town Hall could pack such a punch, and he just spouted it forever. Off the back of that visit, you've got these three legendary records that came out. Scary to think that Strong Arm Law and Wheels of Steel came out in the same year. And
Jam, can I just make a point on that, which is this really upsets me, this, because obviously Wheels of Steel came before Strong Arm of the Law. So if you're hoping that's chronologically correct, it's incorrect. So before we get any comments on that,
but there
you go.
They were 6 months apart, which is ridiculous. But yeah, and in my house, when depending on my age, it was Denim and Leather was the one that for me that was a constant. I started secondary school around this time, 81, and I saw an essay that I wrote recently. I got in my loft, and it stated my favourite bands were Elvis Presley, Status Quo, Queen, and Saxon. And I was just giggling away. I was thinking 81, there I was, 10, 11 years of age, and just loving Saxon. But yeah, for me, it was those first records were just amazing. Power of the Glory tour in '83, before the Crusade happened, Crusade tour. I know that Gav and I definitely, we had the Live from City Hall video. And again, I've mentioned that in a previous pod. I went thirds with my older brothers, and we bought that video. It's 1999. It was live from Nottingham City Hall, and I played it to pieces, watched it all the time. And it was just immense. And I'd not been to a rock gig at that point, and that was my learning, and to learn what it was going to be like at some stage. So for me, they were my first, the first time I came across Saxon, set me on the road. Of course, we all listened to Friday Rock Show, so I don't know what other people are going to say, but the Friday Rock Show, Saxon were a staple. I'm guessing, I don't know if anyone else is going to mention this, but the sing back Tommy Vance did on Friday Rock Show. Tommy Vance had the foresight to have a rock with Tommy Vance, and then the crowd repeated it back, and the vein of that is just amazing. You'd have to, if you watch the rock show around that, listen to the rock show, you'd know exactly what I was talking about.
So what year was that? Was that that would be the Innocence tour, would it?
I don't know. I just that came to me when I was preparing for this. I was picking it up. I just thought of that, and
because we were there in that crowd doing that chant.
What a lot of people.
I think it was actually.
Yeah. But alongside that, you've got the Eagles Landed album as well. And again, so many quotes with my mates from my childhood, from my teens, that came from, for instance, the Eagles Landed. That the introduction to heavy metal, fill your heads with heavy metal thunder. Anyone that's watching this, that's heard that record, there's 40,000 watts near. You know that, don't you? So many biffisms that came at that time that have just stayed with me forever. So yeah, for me, that was the early door Saxon.
Yeah, that's all brilliant.
Gav?
Yeah, I was just thinking today that one of my abiding memories is listening to the top 40 on the little radio in the kitchen, and you've got all early 80s stuff, you know, all the I mean, it's a great era for music anyway. But then in the middle of this pop, Saxon come on with Wheels of Steel. It's actually a chart hit. They actually went on top of the pops, and it was so different from everything else at the time, and so brilliant. And I still love the production on that song, on that album. It's just so clean and metal. It's so good. But have that come on a top 40 radio show, me there with my pause button, you know, to record the songs I liked, and then try and drum to them with my pots and pans and my spoons, because it was that far ago. But yeah, that was one of the kind of amazing things about Saxon, was they were pop, you know, they were in everyone's kind of minds because they were that popular. It was amazing. But yeah, then later on, you know, as Jamie mentioned, a tour every year, you know, and sometimes we'd go to Oxford and Hammersmith on the same tour, and they, you know, like on the Maiden show, they did those tour cycles, and you could rely on them, and it was you know, they were up there with all the bands we've mentioned before as kind of our favourites. But yeah, Crusader is the one we've chosen today, really, because it's the when it all came together as far as buying a new album, going to the tour a couple of times, and you know, so that again, a bit like Fly on the Wall in a previous episode, is kind of dear to my heart for that reason, really.
Brilliant. Okay, fantastic. Gappy?
Yeah, I'm not like you boys, because I didn't really get into Saxon for quite a while. I didn't have an older brother like Gav and Jamo. Didn't really hear about them until the early 80s when I was at school. And I never really got into the first few records. And I know you lot always used to take the piss out of me because I didn't like them. It wasn't until Power and the Glory came out in '83, and Gav said, "I know you're going to like Saxon now because this album's brilliant." And he played me This Town Rocks, and I thought, well, that's a bit different to the Saxon I'd heard before. And I got into them from that, really. Crusader was brilliant. Absolutely love Crusader. The beginning of the Crusader song is so good, but it just reminds me of a quote from Kevin Jamison, who said that when he heard the beginning of Crusader, that was it for him and Saxon. He hated it, absolutely detested it. Remember, Jamo? That's what he said.
A generational thing there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The atmosphere,
the first one I really liked, and he absolutely hated it. So anyway, there you go.
But just to pick up on your point there, I love how Gav, the drummer, plays the introductory track, which is "Does This Town Know How to Knock?"
Yeah, well, it was introducing Nigel Glockler, wasn't it? So
yeah, that's right. That was the first album he was on. Well, no, he was on Eagle Has Landed, but I guess it was the first studio album he was on.
Oh yeah, first studio album. Yeah.
With the drumming intro, I love how you've done that. It's just
yeah. I probably couldn't. I couldn't play it at the time. I don't think. Could I? I can't remember. But
I don't know, mate. But you just
not an '83
impressed me, so that's why you played me that song first.
Oh, it's brilliant. I love the production on that album as well. It's so meaty. It's brilliant.
I didn't recall you practicing that many times on the desk at school.
I'd imagine so, yeah.
Get it one day.
And Redline.
Obviously.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the guitaring in that at the beginning.
The Power and the Glory was the album that preceded Crusader. And what's really interesting on the video there, available all good record and video shops.
Yeah.
Now, record shops are making a comeback. I'm not sure when the video shop will, or is that a missed opportunity? I'm thinking now maybe that's something we should be looking into. Reopening a video shop, would that go down well? I'm not sure.
And soon to be available worldwide.
Graded rather quickly.
So look, for me, Wheels of Steel, I had that taped from a neighbour. I think I mentioned the other day that with Let There Be Rock. I loved it. I thought it was brilliant. And the song Wheels of Steel in particular, I thought it was fantastic. I'm not sure my mum liked it so much because it was on constantly when I got the vinyl. Absolutely fantastic album, as was Strong Arm of the Law. For me, that's their best album. I think there's some great tunes on that album. And as the other guys have said, they were staple for us all. They were a proper heavy metal band, and they were the first band that I saw live at Oxford Apollo. So we'll get to that, I guess, in a bit. But they were exciting times knowing that these boys were coming round. So I think we're going to talk about the singles now, Gav, aren't we? Which I don't know if they came out before or after the album. Do you want to touch on that press ad first, though?
I guess this would have been around the time of the album, but also announcing the tour. I guess they were pretty concurrent. But yeah, lovely old-fashioned press ad. It's great stuff. And then, as you say, the singles. Now, none of us can remember these singles coming out. So I don't know whether it was Carrera.
Amazing cover that is.
Don't know if it was Carrera doing a bad job, if that's how you pronounce it, or just that we weren't interested in singles. But I definitely didn't hear these. I assume Sailing to America was the first one. Definitely didn't hear that before the album. The first time I heard all of Crusader was the album. So yeah, I didn't even know that Do It All For You was a single actually until I did this preparation here. But yeah, it's
No, I didn't.
yeah,
You've got one brilliant cover and one terrible cover.
Yeah, on the back of Sailing to America, they're starting to change their image a bit there, which I think in back to maybe Jamo's family, they are starting to change a little bit. If you look at the back of Wheels of Steel, I don't know if any of you got that there, but the picture of the band on the back of that, I mean, they look proper new wave of British heavy metal at the time, I suppose. Well, probably even more aligned to Motorhead, if we're honest. But Gav's going to pick that out. There's a picture of them on the back of that. I mean, that's iconic, that picture. I think they look great, and they're starting to change to probably looking more American, which is interesting because when we get to the album, which we'll in a minute, the album was actually recorded at Sound City in LA.
Yeah,
which, if anyone's into the Foo Fighters, they'll know that that's been talked about and signposted quite a lot with some of the stuff that Dave Grohl's been doing. So, yeah, surprisingly, Sound City, and I think they've been sponsored by Nike of all people, or Nike, however you want to call it. But so that's the singles, and then we move on to the album. So, Jam, do you remember buying the album?
I remember it. Yes, because it was different to the others. It was a gorgeous. It was a lovely gatefold, and it was more polished. I remember listening to it and putting it on and going, "Oh, hello." It was different. It was different. The start for me, the song Crusader is just. I think it's just brilliant. The atmosphere at the beginning. And it still does it to me now. I saw them when I see them now, and that song, it still sounds brilliant. I still love it. So yeah, it was a much more commercial and much more polished sound. But as you say, they were just starting to go lycra, as I like to think. As you said before, there's been that change. They've got the hair's been actually combed or brushed. But yeah, as far as the record's concerned, the anthemic opening track, which is pure Saxon, has been forever. Sailing to America, I really liked the track. Some of the diehards were like, "What is going on here?" Do It All For You. It's like a ballady thing. I really liked the record.
That's the game.
Yeah, I really liked the record. And it's when I was doing my research, it sold 2 million copies worldwide. I found out.
Yeah.
That's a lot of units. It's sold. I mean, if anyone knows different, let me know. But it sold a lot of records, and yeah, overall for me, really good, really strong, but different. So if you were someone that was ensconced in those first five records, I understand where you're coming from. Yeah, this was different, and I like different.
And I think this is the production was a guy called Kevin Beamish.
Yeah,
and the people we would know that he's produced is the REO Speedwagon hits, the hit albums, the High Fidelity era, and so it kind of makes sense really when you hear that.
Did he actually produce High Fidelity then?
Yeah.
Fantastic, which is, again, a shout out. That's an amazing record. Brilliant.
As far as I know, if I'm wrong, let me know below.
Look in a minute on the copy, but yeah.
But he also did Y&T, Jam?
Yes, that's where I think,
Yeah, and he did Open Fire, Down for the Count, Contagious.
So
you've
again,
got the Summertime Girls.
Again, it's very interesting because that was Y&T when they were transitioning from their early days, head down rock, it's a little bit more polished and taking on that American market.
That's what they were trying to crack. So if you think at the time, they were maybe trying to follow the Def Leppard Pyromania piece. They were looking at Motley Crue, who were also starting to break the States at the time. So I think just with those two bands alone, and then of course Bon Jovi coming out at around that time as well, with starting to shift some units. So you can see why they were going down that route.
Around this time, I do know they did tour with Crew in the States around this time as well.
That's true.
good link up.
And I think I'm right in saying that this was the album that they already knew they were signing to EMI. So I think Carrera still had them in the UK and maybe France because they were a French label, but globally it was EMI.
Yeah.
So there would have been a lot of international pressure to go this direction, you know, and EMI probably went a long way to fund the studio and the choice of producer and all that stuff.
Exactly.
So that makes sense as well, doesn't it?
Do you remember getting the album, Gav?
I do actually. Randomly, I was in Oxford Street, and there was a record shop downstairs, and I picked it up. I didn't even know it was out. Same with a lot of albums of those times, because you just went into a record shop and found the album. You didn't find it out any other way. You know, there were no fan clubs or emails or internet. So yeah, I saw the album and bloody hell, bought it. Somehow I got a French version. So I've still got it, but it's a French label on it. So I don't know if they were bringing in dodgy, cheap imports or something to this Oxford Street cellar record shop. But yeah.
What was it called? Norman?
No, it was literally on Oxford Street, and it was like had all kinds of merchandise and stuff. So
sorry, it's a terrible joke, isn't it?
It's a terrible.
Was that a historical joke?
Yes, yeah. Typical.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm afraid.
Gappy, did you buy this album? I can't remember if you've got a copy of it.
No, I haven't. No. Do you know what? I've never bought a Saxon album in my entire life. I've always relied on you lot for my Saxon. So I would have been listening to this in Gav's bedroom most of the time.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, I bought the album. I can't remember where I bought it from. Obviously, gatefold, as you've already said, which is pretty cool. Not all albums were gatefold at the time. Fellows About to Rock was a gatefold. That's probably the only one I remember about that sort of time. Yeah, I did like the album when it came out, but I'm not going to lie, it's not one that I delve back into the collection and pick out and listen to that much really anymore. I've listened to it prior to this. Actually, it's all right. It's quite good. A couple of really nice tracks on there, a little bit of What You Fancy, which I think they played live as well when we saw them. Crusader. Sailing to America is the real break from what they've been before, in my opinion. This is where they were trying to capture the American market, but it's almost like they've got one foot in one market and 1 foot in the other. It's sort of like not they hadn't gone the full hog, had they, like Def Leppard had, and really moved with Pyromania. I don't think Saxon had done that with this album. But look, it was okay. To your point, Jamie, it was the start of the Lycra years, and where Motorhead, I haven't worn a Motorhead t-shirt tonight because of that, but where Motorhead probably stayed true to their roots, it probably served them quite well, to be fair. But really interesting how that changed. But it's a good album. It's definitely worth a spin if you haven't heard it before, and was a good, I guess, a good bit of excitement before we went to the gig, because I'm pretty sure this was out before we saw them.
Yeah, I think so.
At the gig, and I think this was I think we saw them in February '84. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, it was my first gig. So, should we move on to the tour and maybe have a bit of a chat around that?
Just want to say one more thing about the album, that there's a cover version on there, and I don't know if people know this, but Set Me Free is a Sweet song.
Yeah.
The Sweet used to do really poppy, popcorn A-sides and metal B-sides, and this was one of their metal songs, and it's not that different. If you hear the original Sweet song, it's pretty similar and pretty rocking. So, yeah, I really like it. I really think it suits Saxon as well.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. So let's get on to the tour, and that's the cover of the programme there, Gav, that you put on. What's really interesting, that's a couple of copies. Oh, mine looks nicer. And what's really interesting is not obviously the merch sheet inside, but they do an interview with the band in the programme, and they're talking about who their influences are. So stuff like Pink Floyd, Roger Waters, Jimi Hendrix, Simon Phillips, funnily enough, Nigel Glockler, you probably read that. It's really interesting. But not necessarily all the covers that they've done on their inspirations. So it's interesting maybe how much of that has not flown through to the intro, but has not carried through to their inspirations. Right. Record that they did a couple of years ago, and I think there's a new one coming out soon.
There is another one, yeah.
Digress on that slightly, but so Gav, you went to the gig. Do you want to just give us a bit of a reminder? Can you remember any of it?
Yeah, for me, I remember the castle, because it was all made up as a kind of, I guess it's like a theatre set. And it looked great at the time. They had the backlit stained glass windows type stuff and a couple of turrets so the guitarists could go up at the top, and that was quite impressive for a 13, 14-year-old lad. So I thought they were brilliant. I love Nigel Glockler anyway, so I was probably fixated on him most of the gig. And he always used to have a massive chrome kit as well. And could do no wrong really. And they were so loud. It was one of those cases which we had quite often. We'd congregate in the classroom the next day and be absolutely deaf. And they were renowned for being one of the loudest bands. Them and Motorhead were the loudest bands.
And it was very loud in a small theatre, a 2,000 capacity theatre.
And they were proud. They were proud to be loud.
Yeah, I'm proud to be from Barnsley as well. We haven't mentioned that yet either. So
that's true. Yeah.
South Yorkshire. So, Jam, do you remember? Do you remember the gig?
I know it sounds when you say that the set for them. I'd been to a few gigs. You'd been to Priest, Gav. I'd been to MSG. We'd been to, and it was Marshalls. I love the traditional stack of Marshalls behind. Out you come, rocking. This was different for me. This was early doors. I'd seen Y&T. I'd seen MSG. I'd seen Kiss, but they didn't bring the full production. They had the tank and that. But this in a small theatre. They came out and the set they had, it was brilliant. Stained glass windows. And it was proper. It was proper theatre. It was brilliant. We met the Eagle for the first time as well. Obviously, it's the first time we've seen Saxon. But the light show, as with all metal gigs, the difference that heavy metal had, I believed, over any other genre of music that other people seemed to think was decent, and I at the time thought was rubbish. The genre, it was such a show. Your pounds that you spent on your ticket, was this £4, £55, whatever the heck, whatever it was. We'll see later when we see a ticket. They put it all into it felt to me like they put it all into the production. There was nothing left to chance. They were going to have the lights, the set, everything. And that's what I remember for this one. It's the first proper. I was like, holy shit! This isn't just a rock show. It was actually proper theatre, and I thought it was brilliant. It blew me away, to be honest. Totally blew me away.
Gaps, you didn't. I don't think you went to this one, did you? You didn't go.
No, I didn't see him till the Innocence tour. That was the first time I saw him.
Right. Okay. Excellent. As I said, it was my first gig. I think I mentioned on a previous podcast. I'd rocked up. Completely blew me away. You're right with the castle. It looked fantastic. The lights looked amazing. The Eagle coming down. I mean, it was just so exciting seeing that later in the show as one of the highlights of the show. When you look at the pictures of the Eagle now, and we were laughing before this, it probably looks more like and apologies for any huge Saxon fans, it probably looks more like a flying pigeon now than the Eagle that's on your shirt. 1984, it looked brilliant, and it was great fun. I remember coming out of the gig, I twisted my neck head to Wheels of Steel.
As you do.
So not sure that went down that well when I got home. But I did buy a T-shirt outside of the Shonky guys outside the theatre for a couple of hours. But it was actually really good. The T-shirt was cool. So it was. I've not got it now anymore, unfortunately. But it was a brilliant show. Couple of great songs. I remember them playing. Obviously, Wheels of Steel, which I thought was absolutely amazing. Dallas 1 PM. But they did play a couple off the new album as well. I was looking forward to a little bit of What You Fancy, which was.
We've got the set list coming up, I think.
Yeah, and also Crusader, which actually is a really, really good tune, and that has stood the test of time. It's interesting when you listen to the lyrics, though, and maybe some of the political connotations that might have these days. Whether they do that sort of song now, maybe not.
They still do.
Oh, they still
play it, but I mean, whether they'd have written that now,
right,
I'm sure they would have done. But look, it was a great show. A couple of support bands as well, which.
Just to touch on the songs again, sorry.
Yeah,
do you
we
recall
can go back to them anyway.
A little bit of What You Fancy? That was they tried to sing back with a little bit of What You Fancy. Do you recall that? Anyone else that was there?
I remember them doing. I remember
you fancy it. Everyone had shout, always does you good.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
It didn't stay around.
No.
For future years.
Hence, we can't remember it.
They went back to Wheels of Steel. Don't worry.
Yeah.
But I do remember the bit in the middle where Dobbo was doing the "Do you like" with Biff? Do you like ABC? And Mr. Dawson was given a few unsavoury signs, which is obviously not appropriate for this podcast.
No,
but it gives you an idea of actually the engagement they were having with the kids. So to your point, Jam, at the time, you loved heavy metal, and they were obviously just taking the pee out of all the pop bands that were around. I'm sure they were talking about Duran Duran, Culture Club, ABC, etc.
This is the thing when you're talking about. I mean, I'd have worn my denim jacket and I'd have had a metal T-shirt on. I might have even sported a studded leather wristband. That's because I was a metalhead. But you'd have had people walking down the street with the blood. I don't know. With what did they? With I don't know.
New Romantics.
Yeah. And that was you were very much identifiable by how you looked back then.
Yeah, it was very tribal.
Yeah,
it was way tribal. Yeah.
So
these days they don't understand that. My kids don't understand it, and they're in their 20s.
So there were two support bands on the night, Gav, I believe. I've got one memory of the first band that were on. That was Battle Axe. Now, again, if I'm wrong, just let me know. I think these guys were from the northeast, sort of Newcastle area, and they played a song called Chopper Attack, which sounded brilliant. It blew us away. So I was with another guy that were from the village that I grew up in, just down the road from these guys, and we used to talk about this song Chopper Attack for years afterwards. It was such a memory. Verity, I can't remember anything of, but look, I thought Battle Axe were good, and it was a good introduction to live music. So they were actually officially the first live band I ever saw.
Oh, cool.
So I've still got a memory of that, which makes sense for them.
That makes sense why you should remember, because I don't. But I certainly remember the first band I saw that supported MSG, Wildlife.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of thing. It'd be interesting to find out. It would. I know we've said this before. If anyone's actually made it this far in, we'd love to hear in the comments anyone whose people's first band was that they actually saw. It's likely to be a support band, but it could be some pretty big bands there. So yeah.
I know I didn't go, but wasn't it incredibly unusual, especially for the 80s, to have two sport bands?
Mm.
Yeah. At a theatre, at arenas, often you would get two support bands at an arena gig. They charge an extra couple of quid. But yeah, at a theatre.
I don't even know if they both did the whole tour. I don't know if it was just an Oxford thing or what, but maybe someone who went can tell us that as well. But it was very unusual. I think Verity was just a friend of Biff's or something. John Verity because he's a Yorkshireman, I think. So that's how we got.
We had a look, and he actually produced the first Saxon album.
That's right. Yeah, as John V. Yeah. So that's really cool.
In Argent in the 70s.
So yeah, he's got a bit of pedigree. Then must have been pretty good at what he did.
Was he in the Zombies before that, Gappy, or not? Do you know?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Okay.
Well, Argent were the band that spawned quite a few hits for other people, like you were saying with Rainbow as well.
Yeah, with Russ Ballard, wasn't it?
Russ Ballard, yeah. And then as a songwriter, he was God Gave Rock and Roll to You for Kiss as well. So yeah, hopefully made some money at some point.
So we remember more about that than we do the show.
Yeah, I bet there's some catchy songs. So this is the show itself. For some reason, it doesn't have the date on it, and it's not because I've blanked it out. It's just wasn't on my ticket, which is really helpful.
I think it was the 21st of February.
I think you're
right. You put it out there. It's on the site.
Yeah, it is, but it's just not on the ticket, which is a bit random. And I was third row of the circle. So that's why the impression of the castle would have been brilliant, because I could have seen it clearly. Yeah. So I don't remember being in the circle, but, I trust my ticket.
You may well have come downstairs. Not that we'd have done such foolish things in getting our friends down, but we may have.
They used to be passing back of the tickets and stuff.
Yeah.
It was
especially
possible.
Especially Hammersmith, if I recall.
Yeah. But the set list is just awesome. I mean, I would pay serious money to see that set list. It's so good.
You can't argue with that. Everything, it's a cracker. It's a real cracker. Drum solo.
And finishing with a medley as well.
Yeah.
That leaves you happy, doesn't it? Look at that lot. To leave your ears ringing.
That's pretty rocking, isn't it? And those songs from the album to the live became much more rocky, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, and they're good songs. So there's nothing wrong with that set list at all.
That's for me, that's a really strong set list.
Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, yeah.
Maybe Just Let Me Rock could go, but
yeah.
I'm just trying to count up how many of the new 1, 2, 3, 4. Just let me
That was stock, wasn't it? You played 4 off the new album. That was quite a normal sort of thing in and around that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, unlike The Darkness a couple of years when I saw them, they played the whole album start to finish, much to the disdain of the audience as well.
A new album.
That was at the Roundhouse a couple of years ago. But
all right.
Hey ho. But yeah, brilliant set list. So any other memories of the gig that you guys want to share?
No, that's pretty much it for me. I mean, I remember it's just that it was such an important time in our development into metal, because you're piling along to that. As I say, there were so many firsts for us. It was your first gig deal.
Yeah.
For Gav, he'd have been as the drummer. He's seeing Nigel Glockler, and he was just immense, just amazing, amazing tool for him, Saxon, as far as I'm concerned, for his immenseness.
Yeah.
He fitted straight in. It was incredible that the live album was, pretty much recorded a few months after he joined, as far as I know. And the story of him joining was interesting as well, because I was aware of him because of Toyah. Don't laugh. I loved Toyah back in the day, and she always had brilliant drummers. And Nigel Glockler was the drummer on her biggest album, it's called Anthem, and there's lots of drum parts on that. It's a very rhythmic album, and he was a rocker, which you can tell in his drumming with Toyah. He's a rocker, and he had tickets to see Saxon in Brighton, where he lived, and then they lost the drummer, and he ended up playing the show that he had a ticket to go and see. But how he got it in so well, so quickly is amazing. And you could say he was a pop drummer, and all of a sudden he's having to do really fast double bass drumming.
Yeah,
he had the chops straight away. Incredible.
Bass is brilliant. I mean, for me, yeah. So that's the only thing that it was such an important point. They were almost in transition, but we caught them. They were mind blowing, in my opinion. And what they've done since, they've just gone on. For me, I know I've said this many times. My favourite Saxon album is the one they did last year. For me, it's the best one they've ever done. They're more metal than they've ever been, and that's just amazing. Any Saxon fan that you speak to will be saying exactly the same thing. This was a great period, and they needed to do this to get where they are today. And the fact that they're still releasing proper, vibrant, awesome music, I love.
Okay.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, you're such a fan still. Yeah, well, we all are to a degree.
He's more of a fan now than he ever was.
Yeah.
The music they're producing is better than it's ever been. I would just say to anyone, it's the one thing I would, if I'm looking for a recommendation, put their latest record on. You will be amazed.
I did buy it on your recommendation, and I got a warped copy, and it was the most warped record I've ever bought.
Did you? I didn't know that.
Yeah. I was looking forward to listening to it on a Friday night. I put it on, and it was so warped it actually knocked the arm off the record.
Wow.
The old trick, Gappy, was put a bit of blue tack and a 1p coin on top of
it. Yes. The needle.
That would normally make it work. So what came next then, Gav? There were a couple of albums that, as they went into this Lycra era, they probably lost a big part of their audience searching for that American breakthrough, which sadly never really came. So
yeah, well, I think these two represent fully immersed in it. Well, they kind of went one in, one out, because the Innocence Is No Excuse was definitely an EMI album and definitely a push for the US market. And
it had the Chris Christopherson song on it, didn't it? Or was that later?
No, that was later. That's why I think this was American. Then they rebelled and tried to make it more rocky, and then they went and did the Destiny.
Yeah.
Oh, that's it. From that one.
The one that had that on, yeah. But yeah, so this one, obviously, they're just looking at the cover. They're trying to do something different. This is a very different Saxon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
visually.
I think Jammer, you quite like the cover to this record, didn't you?
I think the whole concept was immense, and 12 inches, 7 inches, everything that I bought. This was a bit different because we'd had a run into this. We had back on the back on the streets out, and there were changes, but I liked it. I was full of it. I was happy as a pig. I was coming up. I was 16. We were then into the realms where we could go to. They were still going to play Oxford. We could go to Hammersmith as well.
Yeah.
The world was our metal oyster. No, it had a really good sound. So yeah, carried on. It was good. For me, it was Rock the Nations that it faltered a tad.
Yeah.
They were carrying on the EMI side of things. Yeah.
So what they were doing, they were pushing for that American market, and they were going head to head with Motley Crue, Rat, Dokken. And look, I know we've talked about this a few times in terms of the way that bands looked and lined up. And this is not being disrespectful to Saxon. I think they look much better when they were Wheels of Steel and look more akin to Motorhead than they did when they were trying to look like Motley Crue, Rat and Dokken, because they just couldn't stand up. Or Def Leppard as well, to be fair. They just couldn't. They just didn't have the image that those guys had, did they?
It was only really Biff that could do it.
I was going to say Biff could carry off anything. And
the rest of them looked like what they were, kind of coal miners, builders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yorkshire stock. They didn't look like they were going to be walking down Sunset Boulevard anytime soon.
No.
So yeah, it's a bit of a curious decision to try and send him in that direction, but everybody was doing it, so fair enough.
You can see why they did. But to be fair to Saxon, they are still going, and they're going strong. Jam, I know you went to see him in December, I think it was last year, and you loved it. It was
I mean, for me, they went through that time and the Rock the Nations, then Destiny, and then they started picking up, and they had a couple of changes. Dobby Dawson, Mr. Dawson, Dawson left the band in '86-ish. Graham Oliver was still in the band until around the 94. But Nibs Carter and Doug Scarrett for 90, I want to say 94. I got it written down here somewhere. For 94. They just started. They just almost went back to basics. And if you pick up any of the records around that time, they just there's a level of metal that they start and they just carry on. It's just a classic. They're really good. So around the 94, 95 time, Inner Sanctum, great record as well before that. But then they went on a roll again. They're 20. How many records have they done? They've done I think 23 studio albums they've recorded. There's a couple of iffy ones in the middle, but otherwise the majority of them are absolute barnstormers.
Does that include the Inspirations album as well, Ken?
No.
Okay. They did record that though, didn't they?
I would very much say, especially the first one, I've actually listened to it, it's all right. But they're very much we've done everything that we want to do. We want to do this, so we will. And they're worth a listen. The second one, there's a new one coming out soon, unless it's already out.
Yeah, it's coming out soon, I think. It's not out yet. I don't know if it's April or not. I think I did look at it.
Yeah. But I think they're very much. They did the first one because they were locked up, so why not? They just recorded their favourite records. There's a couple of decent songs on there.
I think there's a Problem Child on it as well, isn't it? Yeah, which I think is brilliant.
Rocker. I think there's a Deep Purple song. I want to say.
Yeah, Speaking. It's brilliant.
Speaking. Yeah.
I thought that version was really good.
Really good. So there are a few decent tracks on it.
Keyboard player.
Yeah, there's a few decent tracks on it, but they're not proper Saxon studio records. But yeah.
Okay, cool. And that comes out on the 24th of March, if anyone's interested. So,
boom,
just under a month. Okay, guys. Well, that finishes it for the Crusader Tour '84 and Crusader, and our homage to one of the greatest British heavy metal bands ever, Saxon. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe. If you fancy seeing any of the gigs that we go to as well, please subscribe to Dill's Rock channel. Many people are at the moment, so please get on the bus with that too. Enjoy the rest of your day. See you later, guys.
Cheers.
Guys.